If you've been thinking about getting Fae Farm and one of your deciding factors is the decorating system, stay tuned because we will take a very close look at it today. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. As an Animal Crossing player, my favorite part of that game is basically the decorating aspect. So when I heard that decorating would play kind of a big role in Fae Farm, I was definitely very interested. And after playing on separate save files with a combined amount of well over 60 hours already, I thought it was time to sit down, take this decorating system apart, and analyze it to see how good it really is. So we will take a look at some of the basics. I'll show you some of the items and things that you can generally use for decorating, and then we will chat about how easy it is to acquire items and how intuitive the decorating feels. And then finally, I want to mention some unique features and give my overall general opinion on it. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. First, let's take a look at the basics. What can be decorated? The short answer for this is your farms and houses. And the long answer is, and I will try not to spoil too much here, but there are 3 separate areas in which you have your own farm that can be decorated, one of which is basically 2 farms right next to each other. So it's basically 4 farm-house combinations in total. And then I would say it is somewhat similar to Stardew. You can decorate the outside of your farm as well as inside of your house. The areas that you can decorate are indicated by a grid system once you enter the decorating mode, which can only be opened up if you're standing in a space that can be decorated. And that brings us to a couple of restrictions, which we will talk about before I want to dive further into the grid system itself. So what can be decorated is the entire rest of the world, outside of your farm pretty much. So for example, the town square or the forest, any area around your farm pretty much can be changed. And you also can change any of the landscaping. So you can add cliffs or waterscaping or even move houses. And then each farm has kind of its own restrictions as well, which you see once you enter the build mode. Let's start with the interiors. So you'll basically be starting with this small house here. You can upgrade it later. I'll kind of show you a version where I kind of did that a little bit, but this is basically what you start with, and it's going to be totally enough for me to show you kind of what I mean. Here you can see at the very bottom, you can enter your build mode, and then it kind of looks like this. And you can see right away what I mean by a grid system. Now, I would say it's actually pretty nice inside your house because it pretty much goes all the way over to the sides of your walls. The only spaces, and you'll notice this, is where you can't decorate is actually in front of your door, which is sometimes a little weird. If, for example, let's say you'd like to put a plant right here, you can't do that. You have to move it like a tile over, which is still okay, Just keep in mind that there are a couple of spaces here that you can't put any items on. However, you can actually put some rugs. So I think this is a nice way to kind of breach that gap and kind of just add a little rug to like a welcome mat, if you will. And I feel like that's pretty nice. And then let's also talk about the wall space for a second, because I've seen a couple of questions floating around in the community. So the way that you decorate in this game on your walls is you basically go all the way up to your wall. If you can't access it, you might have to move some items around, and then you can press A if you're on your controller, or probably just click on it on PC, and then you can select a decoration. You don't craft this right from your pocket like you do here with the build mode. You can just craft whichever item you've got unlocked, but for the wall stuff, you craft it at a workstation first, and then you have it inside of your pockets, and then you kind of put it up on the wall. Now, once you've upgraded, you will also increase the amount of stuff that you can put on your walls, like you can see here. I will say one of the things I find a tiny bit weird is these are great spaces for a window. You can see it's like a nice spacing and everything. However, anything else that's a bit smaller, like the shelf here, is put to the very top of the tile at the wall. And I feel like this is just a very awkward spacing for a piece of shelf. So I personally hope that they will change this a little bit in the future. And then let's take a look at the farm outside. Now, it's winter on my farm right now, which I hope isn't too much of a spoiler. But basically, what you will notice right away if you're standing in front of your house is you can actually enter decorating mode. But then if we head down the stairs and we steer, it pops up. So now let's go into decorating mode and see what we can decorate. Once again, it pretty much is indicated by the tile system. You can see it here kind of ending. So there are a couple of spaces that we can't decorate. I will mention those specifically in just a second. Also the same thing kind of here over to the cliff, but you can see kind of where the tile system ends. And then, for example, this item here, I'm still able to place it pretty much on the outside. So sometimes you can also just try and live on the edge a little bit, if you will. And then it kind of connects all the way over here and then once again moves in a pretty much straight line all the way over to the other side of your farm, which is basically right here. So it's kind of like a rectangular shape that you can decorate from a bit of a different angle. Let me briefly show you this again. You enter your farm from this space right here. There are a couple of spaces right here that make it a little bit awkward to connect this with a path, in my opinion. I hope they give us like a few more tiles right here. And then you can walk all the way over to this side. There's like some foliage here, and then there's your well, and this is your chicken coop. And this is something I'm actually very sad about. You can pretty much see where my line of decorating ended. This was like the only decorating I've really attempted so far. I was trying to kind of get acquainted with the game first. But yeah, the line pretty much ends here, and then the chicken coop isn't really included. So you can't change anything about this. You can't add like little decorative like hay bales, or you can't put like flowers. You can't plant trees here. So I hope they add this. Just as well as these areas kind of like up to your staircase. They have added like a couple of stones so it doesn't look too undecorated, but as someone who would probably plaster every single tile of what I have, it'll probably still look a little bit awkward. So I wish they gave us these, I don't know, 3 or 4 more tiles, maybe just 2, I'm not quite sure, plus this tiny space in front of your house. I mean, I would like to be able to plant a tree right here, or put down some plants or stuff like that. Now, if I head over here and jump to kind of the second level, which is still my farm pretty much, this is like the second part of your first farm, if you will. It is starting to get a little bit dark. I hope that's okay. It's pretty much the same thing again, as well as on the other farms. You know, we have a staircase here, and then this is kind of where our grid system starts. And it once again kind of moves around all the way in somewhat of a rectangular shape, and then kind of ends somewhere over here. I think this is pretty much on the outskirts already. So once again, there are a couple of tiles I would like to see added in the future, just because I do think they, yeah, I don't know, they add like a little bit more in being able to connect certain buildings. Next up, let's talk about pathing. Now, there are different types of pathing that you can discover in this game just through different recipes that you find upon exploring the map and like progressing through the story, therefore unlocking more parts of the map and so on and so forth. And so far, I will say I like the aspect of all of the pathing. So I will just kind of show this to you here on our little empty plot of land. There is quite a nice selection of different pathings. I'm not sure if I have everything, but I think I do have like a good selection so far. And the first thing I want to mention is that pathing and rugs basically function the same way, because everything can be stitched together individually. So you can do separate tiles of rugs, or you can do pretty much giant rugs that then stitch together to a beautiful design. And other pathings pretty much work exactly the same. So you can stitch them together, or you can also just do like single tiles. So these place per separate tile, which I find really, really good. And you will notice, obviously, I've put a rug outside, which as an Animal Crossing player kind of blows my mind a little bit. And to blow your mind a little further, the same thing can be done inside. You can put rugs, either single tile or stitch them together, or you can also literally put down pathing. So you could make your entire room be covered in, I don't know, mossy stone path, because why not? Or something I actually really thought was cute is to have these flower patches, because, you know, my plant core heart just kind of wants me to do that, you know? But so you can freely stitch together any type of path or rug that you want, which I find like a very, very fun thing. With this knowledge, I guess my, you know, general tip would be to try around and see what you like, but let me show you like a couple of examples so you can judge this a little bit better as well. So one thing I definitely like in these types of games is that you can just kind of stitch together these straight pathing. So you can do like a very organized build. You can make this as wide as you want. And I feel like it looks very cute. Like I feel like it really fits these type of like farming simulators. But at the same time, you could make a much more like intricate design. So let's take this cobblestone path, for example. You could just stitch together like little patches, kind of looks like a fish. You can stitch together different patches of dirt pathing and break them up between with like maybe a flower or something. You could do something like this. You could do just separate pieces of stone. I actually think I kind of like this one. Reminds me of what they did down here with the chicken coop. So you put down single tiles, and then also every once in a while kind of stitch 2 of the same ones together. The same thing, of course, can be done with dirt pathing as well. You can stitch this together as freely as you want. Or the cut stone pathing, for example, when you stitch it together, it kind of gets the structure. Or you can do single tiles. You can choose the wood planks, and these connect very nicely, because if I now want to go to the left, let's say, it actually adds it into like a little curve. And so with this mechanic in mind, what I actually really like to do is I like to take the wood planks and just stitch together 4 tiles and create little circles. And then you can do like a little circle path. You can do them with a bit of a distance in between, maybe add a couple of rocks here and there. You could also not do like just the circle, but kind of like this type of shape. So you can really kind of get creative, either do a very structured thing, you can do a very natural thing. I also remember in Stardew, for example, I would just kind of put this in front of like my barn. I would put a couple of these circles, a couple of stones, a couple of flowers. My animals really are demanding attention right now. Let's give it to them, shall we? But yeah, the pathing so far seems to be really fun. I'm definitely excited to experiment with this because I think the mechanics seem to be very nice for this. Next up, let's talk about items. This is definitely a bit of a bigger thing to talk about, so I will try to explain everything as well as I can. First of all, you also unlock these basically through like your story progress and finding the different recipes all over the map, one after the other. Once you have unlocked the recipes and have the materials, you could pretty much craft them on the spot right there. You just enter your build mode and then, you can see there on the right hand side, I do have all these materials, so I can just go ahead, press A, and then craft it, or obviously just click if you're on a PC. Note on the wall items, like I said earlier, you do have to craft them at a workstation, which is this one right here. Once you use it, you can see that you can craft different windows, different pictures and shelves and everything. Once they're done, you get them in your pocket and then you can put them up in your house. And then one more thing that I want to mention before we dive into some more like the different categories is that you can basically reclaim all of your furniture. So let's say you are entering build mode right here and you're kind of like, ooh, I really want to craft a barrel and put it right here. First of all, of course, if you want to move it, you can just kind of move it like this. That works. Or if you're like, no, this is just not really the right item, I seem to not really love it, you can basically just reclaim it and you get your entire materials back, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me. I think this is an awesome mechanic that more games should have. All right, and then let's go into the different categories of furniture. So there are certain types of furniture that I believe can't be put outside, which is basically the cozy furniture that you can see here. This can only be accessed if you're standing inside your house, and they basically influence the size of your health, energy, and mana, aka magic bars, in the top left. So if you're standing in your house, you can see that little icon with the heart. Press whatever button it tells you to, and then you will get to this type of overview. And here we have the 3 separate categories for health, energy, and mana. And then at the bottom, you can kind of see your current regeneration rate. So the way that I understood it, correct me if I'm wrong, is that however many items you have here in these categories influences the size of your bars. So you can see for me, I have the most items in the relaxing category, 4 out of 10, and that bar in the top left is slightly bigger than the others. And then the overall score that you see at the bottom, which is basically just, I think, the furniture added up, so 3, 4, and 3 equals 10, is your regeneration rate, which basically tells you how fast these replenish when you're at home. Okay, so like let's for example say we're gonna find something to do, we're gonna hit this tree a couple of times. You can see my energy kind of going down like a little bit, and now when I'm inside my house, that bar should actually slowly start filling up again just because I'm at home. Yeah, there we go. And the rate at which it does that is basically the regeneration rate. So decorating in this game can actually be kind of useful. It does require you to like craft all of these very specific items though, which sometimes might not be your total vibe, but I do still think it's kind of like a fun little idea to make the decorating have a bit of an incentive. Then we already looked at that category outside. There are general decorative things such as like barrels, some different plants, some different flower items, like different seasonal things that you can unlock with the different celebrations. And then the last category is pretty much the crafting one over here that allows you to build a bunch of like different workstations, etc., to help you craft certain things that you need for either items or quests or something like that. And all of these, technically also can be used for decoration, so I did want to mention them. Referencing our grid system again that we kind of talked about earlier, one thing to kind of pay attention to is that unfortunately it does not allow you to place anything on half a tile. Some of the items have kind of a nice shape, especially like the plants and stuff like that, so you can almost kind of create the illusion as though they were placed on half a tile, so that's really nice. And then the other thing I do feel like I need to mention is you can basically not put anything on top of anything. So this right here is like a giant surface, right? Or maybe even better, let's use the display stand. A display stand would kind of mean that you can display something else on top of it, but you you can't. Let's try these books right here. Once again, as soon as you get like on top of the bookshelf or on top of the display stand, doesn't let you place them. Or for example, there's also this tiny like fish vase. You can't place it on top of it. I do actually think that is not the way it's supposed to be though, so my hopes for this being fixed in the future are pretty high. Another fun thing is that you can change almost all of the colors in this game. So for each item, let's enter decorating mode. If you walk up to it and basically select it, you can see right there it has an option for colors. Now if I press this, it usually gives me a couple of different regions. It is a little bit different, you know, from item to item. Some of them let you change pretty much every little aspect of them. Sometimes you can only change certain aspects, like for the plant, you can only change the pot color, but it definitely makes sense to check this. This is especially interesting when you, for example, see items just like this one, which is, you know, pretty, but not really my color scheme. But in this case, you can also go ahead and check, and you can actually change pretty much all the colors. So we could make the bookshelf a brown color. We can change the books to have a little bit of a green vibe, and then maybe the details are just also kind of a brown. And immediately the entire vibe of your item is completely changed. So this is super exciting, I feel like. You unlock different color palettes throughout your gameplay. You only start out with, I think, these 6 colors here, but then over time you can have different ones. Like I just unlocked my first little somewhat greenish color palette that I was very excited for, and you can kind of see the rest of these colors are also really, really heckin' pretty. So this will open up a bunch of customization options for you. One thing, however, for which you can't change the colors at all are pretty much all of the workstations. So even these like bright purple ones, for example, if you hover over them, you don't have a color option, which is kind of unfortunate. And that brings us to our next category, which is fencing. Because it does actually work pretty similarly for fencing, you unfortunately can't change colors for them, which I thought after Animal Crossing we were kind of over that, but whatever. So basically you just have your fencing, and the way that they look here is kind of, yeah, that's just gonna be it. You do have a couple of options where, for example, you do find the split log fence and kind of just the brown version. And then at some point you also find the Flutterwood split log fence, which is kind of like purple, but you couldn't change it, for example, to be like green or something like that. So that is like a little bit unfortunate. Apart from that though, I would say the options that they have are quite nice. Some of them seem to be a little bit expensive in the materials that they require. Although as you progress through the game, I will say that it's gonna be totally fine. Like you are gonna be able to find all of these materials, no doubt about it. And same thing, these can all pretty much be reclaimed. So you can try around as much as you want and you're not gonna lose any materials. And then also something I wanted to mention for ease of placing them down, you can basically, so for me, I'm playing on controller, or you can just probably click and hold on your mouse, and then you can just run all the way over to the side. And same thing again if you want to reclaim it. And so that, yeah, that's a pretty handy mechanic, I think. Next up, something that is very important to me personally, natural items. At first, you just start out with 2 trees on your own farm, which is the beech and the oak tree. This right here is what the beech tree looks like. This back here, this big one, is what the oak tree looks like. Very beautiful. And then also at some point you can get fruit trees from a vendor. The special thing about fruit trees, which makes me love them, is that you can move these. You can just move these freely. You can grab them like an item and then plop them wherever you want. Whereas other trees can't be moved. You would have to chop them down and then plant them somewhere else. And then as time goes on, you also find these beautiful trees right here. These are Flutterwood, Sporewood, Ancient, and Frostwood trees. As you can see, they definitely look like a bit of a different aesthetic, so whether or not they fit on your farm is, I guess, up to you and kind of the aesthetic you want to build. I did try earlier to check if you can grow them on your farm, and yes, you can. You could turn this into a completely pink and purple paradise, which, you know, like I would love a couple more like green trees maybe, but these are kind of the options that you have. One more thing that I want to mention when it comes to trees is how far you need to place them apart. So remember a little grid system here. When you have the tree and you plant it here, for example, you will see from kind of where it lets you plant them, you do need to have 2 tiles in between the trees, and it works the same way in a diagonal option. So the next one would be put here, or then you would have to put it like over here. So there always need to be like 2 tiles in between. However, something you might notice right here, you can literally plant them on pathing. Like this is stone pathing, and you can plant a tree on top of it, which honestly I'm very excited about. I don't know if I would want it on stone pathing, but you might remember that we do have, for example, this beautiful flower patch. And so you could put this down and then plant trees on top of it, and it looks like the trees are growing on like a meadow, and it's like beautiful. And also something you might have seen as I walked past, whenever you're kind of behind a tree, they go somewhat transparent. So you can fill up your farm with trees, make it look super overgrown and detailed and everything. And meanwhile, you will still be able to pretty much see everything. As for flowers, there are actually 6 types of flowers with 12 color customizations each. I'm currently working on getting those because it's quite a task, as you only are able to buy 6 different types of flower seeds. You can get roses, lilies, tulips, hyacinth, zinnias, as well as trilliums. And each of those come in white, ivory, yellow, orange, red, kind of a pink, and then like a magenta, purple, blue, turquoise, green, as well as black. So there are definitely a lot of variations. Now for flowers, you basically have to plant them in flower soil beds. So you can't just place them on your land like this, but instead you have to craft these flower soil beds and can then kind of plant your flowers in there. You can also move different flowers. For that, you just need to have an empty flower bed and then take, like, for example, this yellow tulip, and you can pretty much move it over here. It doesn't work, like I said, just planting it on the ground. And then if you've moved them and you don't need this one anymore, you can basically just reclaim it, get your materials back. One thing that should be noted is that as of right now, you can't actually create flower seeds. So every single flower does need to be bred, which is kind of a task. I think once you've succeeded once, it might be like a little bit easier to craft them, but this is definitely kind of important to know. And also along the same line, you couldn't, for example, take this flower and then move up to your other farm because it just exits the build mode and then you don't have the flower anymore. And you obviously can't transfer them to completely different farms in other realms either. This is a little bit of a setback if you want to have like green flowers everywhere, let's say, or something that isn't easily like purchasable, because you will need to breed them every single time. I did kind of start decorating with like some initial flowers over here, and then what I did is just I always kind of introduced some small like flower beds, either like separate, like here with the white lilies, or I also put like 2 together, kind of like that. And I personally found you can decorate with them quite nicely. Currently there are no shrubs in this game and not really that much foliage. You can kind of see these greenery patches though, and that's kind of what I want to talk about now. So there are no shrubs. The only thing that you might be able to do is, for example, craft some stuff. So there's, for example, this potted shrub which you can put down, or we also have like a potted ivy, for example. And if you integrate those with other items, other flowers, and maybe some grass or something like that, you can probably make them look as though they are shrubs. Something to note though is that unfortunately you can change the greenery for these, so you can only change the plant pot. I am mentioning this specifically because there are some items in the game where you can kind of change the color. So for example, this little fish base right here, this one does let you change literally the color of the flowers and everything. And then the other thing you can do to have a bit of greenery on your farm, you can plant these grass patches. There is wild grass, fodder grass, and also clover grass. So basically what happens is you take this and you plant it. You can already kind of see the size of it. And once you plant it, it basically plants it exactly in this shape. Now, some things to note is that you cannot put this close to a tree or when you've already decorated something. So let's take, for example, this area right here. If I wanted to have some grass, I can't actually put it in because this entire area is already covered. And even here, I think the only thing that is blocking me right now is this wooden bucket and of course all my animals. But even in this spot, I can't plant the grass because it is close to a tree. So what I did instead is I basically planted it, and then you can go in separately and remove small parts of this, either around the outside or also just around the inside to kind of thin it out like this. Once again, same mechanic as with the trees. You can pretty much put pathing underneath all of this, which is definitely a fun mechanic, but it is a little bit tedious kind of trying to thin it out and everything. So my tip would be, if you also want your farm to be overgrown a little bit, plant these first, thin them out, and then fit in other items and fit in like trees and stuff, because now that I've planted the grass, I can definitely take a tree and plant it right here and it'll grow in between all of these. So yeah, this takes like a little bit of planning. I think it's like a little bit tedious, but it is kind of a nice option. And then another way, of course, that you can include a little bit of greenery. Once again, it's nighttime. I will insert a picture of this in a different daytime, maybe even a season, is that you can use some flower patches to add a little bit of grass. You can just do it kind of in like little patches. You can just do like singular little patches. I feel like these are actually really cute in between maybe your planks or in between like some other stuff. And that way you can try and have as many plantings as you possibly can. And something else I did want to mention, because I find these quite cute, is you have this lowland critter conservatory. Now you kind of only need it once, but it is kind of a cute item. So you could put this down every once in a while and then maybe try to cover the parts around it. And then if you don't fill it up, it'll just look like this. Or you can also put some bugs in there, and then, you know, you've got a little bug party going on, which also could be very cute for decorating. And that is kind of how the decorating works in Fae Farm. I hope I was able to show you kind of the variety of different things that you have. So now let's go over to me rating the system. So how easy is it to get items? Obviously for Fae Farm, there are no treasure islands, and there's also no trading. However, I will say that recipes are relatively easy to find. Mostly they're scattered throughout the map, and you can get little hints and stuff. It's really fun to explore the map and everything. And there will probably be like different guides in the future showing you all the different locations. Now, some items are somewhat expensive, but I played through the main storyline with this specific save file, and I've made some decent progress with my tools and my skills and everything. And I can truly say the foraging gets so much easier compared to like the beginning. You get so much material out of a single tree or a single rock or a single patch of dirt. So foraging, acquiring materials and stuff is actually really fun. So in my opinion, it is fairly easy to get items. Not too easy that you get bored, but not too hard so you don't want to do it, if that makes sense. Some aspects in Fae Farm are really nice when it comes to decorating. You've pretty much heard me talk about it before, but building from your storage without having to craft it at a workbench, with of course the exception of like wall items, is amazing because you don't have to pre-plan items, and then being able to dissolve items back into their materials is amazing because crafting furniture just isn't as much of a commitment. You know, you can try something out, and if you don't like it, there's absolutely no harm done. Flowers, I would say, are a little bit harder to get just because of having to breed them on every plot and not being able to make like seeds out of them. That one, I hope they kind of fix a little bit in the future. Generally, I would say flower breeding is kind of fun though. Like, because the days pass a lot quicker and everything, it doesn't get like too tedious and too annoying. But I do still hope they give us the option of making flower seeds so you can more easily kind of transfer them to other farms. Some other changes I would like to see in the future. First of all, please let us put things on tables. That should be a given, to be honest. Introduce some more items. I mean, you know, we always want more items, right? Especially plants and stuff. Maybe something like shrubs. And then I would really love to be able to place these like grass patches as like smaller size greenery. Something else I would love is if the color palette was a bit more consistent. So as I showed you before, some plants can be fully changed, like pot and greenery and flower color and everything. Some others, you can only change the pot. So I would like for a little bit of more freedom there. And then something else I noticed is that, for example, this giant jellyfish lamp is one of the required things to craft if you want like maximum coziness in your house. But if you try to change the color, it never really fully changes it. Like, it always stays somewhat blue. At least that's what it felt like to me. So I would love for this to be like a little bit more consistent, that we can really change pretty much all the stuff, because this is such an amazing feature of the game in my eyes. And then one major flaw in my eyes is that there is no picture mode. There is no way to actually capture your creations without having an overlay around it. You've seen it throughout the video. There's a lot of overlay stuff. I would additionally, you know, if I can request things, love to have some different angles maybe, or zoom in like a little bit, but generally just a picture mode that removes the overlay stuff would honestly be a massive thing. Apart from these few things though, I will say that I am genuinely excited about the decorating in this game. You know, placing rugs outside or pathing inside, the different flower colors that you get, the color palettes, it really offers up like some really awesome variety and different styles. Like, I could truthfully see a bunch of like the Animal Crossing like cores coming back, you know, like a cottage core, or you could do like a fairy core. I don't know. I feel like we're gonna see some awesome stuff here. What do you think? What is your favorite thing about this decorating system? Or do you also maybe have something that you would like to change about it? Let me know that in the comments below, please. And with that, I will now say happy decorating. watching. Make sure that you're subscribed for some more cozy gaming videos, and then I will hopefully see you in the next one. Bye everyone!